Okay, we're live. Okay, yeah. Me and me paint can. How's the volume? I am going to set this up while I'm waiting on y'all. Welcome one, welcome y'all. Coffee. So yeah, we're gonna look at Gaza. I mean this with great reverence because it's fun to be fun. The talking heads. I'm gonna look at my idea of the smarter talking heads. Um, I'm not one of them, obviously. Um, I'll say it now. I, the Trump idea, guys, I agree with it. Check it out on my post. But the left media, legacy media, is not for it at all. United Nations went against it. All these people went against it. And all their arguments, I'm like, little me, little old me, is looking at the idea, and I'm like, they're the left's like trashing of Trump's idea, and I thought, well, either they're for it or they just don't really have a good talking points. Like, I don't understand personally. I'm not sure where they got their talk. The one said, well, we're going to put Trump can go to jail for this. Well, they've tried that. They've done a bunch of other things, and like I said, I looked at all the talking points from international, from UN and others, and UN said, well, it's going to take 21 years to rebuild, and the Palestinians should rule themselves. Well, they tried that, and it didn't really work. Hamas took over. They did one election. Hamas took over and never electioned again. And did the UN do anything about that for the decades long that they decided, hey, you know what? We're done with elections. You voted us in. And the people, you no longer have a say. Um, they turn the volume up. Okay, is that what you're saying? Or okay, yeah, okay. I will. All right, how's that? Is that better? Thank you, Jan Audi. Um, yeah, like I said, the talking heads are like, oh, like they said, well, no, it'll take 21 years to rebuild Gaza. Okay, so I'll tell you this: if you're living in a place and it was destroyed by the Israelis, we'll say, whether it was deserved or not is besides the point. For the guy sitting there drinking his coffee, looking at his beautiful view of 21 years of rubble, that's how you create an angry individual. And then you don't give him the money and the wherewithal to fix it. He's not getting up every day to go work because there ain't much work when your whole city is rubble. There's cleaning it up, like what happened in in Germany. Um, the plan that the UN has is basically let's go with the status quo, and we know what happened with the status quo. And what Trump is saying, let's make like Lebanon was before the war happened there. Let's make Gaza the Paris, which kind of doesn't make as much sense, because it's not. But anyway, let's make Gaza the Paris of the Middle East. He's called it the Riviera. I don't know how much into gambling they are, whatever. But he's basically saying let's get international effort in there, American security backed, and first of all, America has to go in first, and they can't go in there under a UN mandate because UN mandate they can't bring in the weapons. They got all these rules of engagement that'll slow the process down so much that it'll just basically be impossible. We know this from the Iraq War, right? And other even with NATO, there can be restrictions. In NATO, it's not really a NATO thing because NATO is only the West. It would leave out China. It would leave out Russia. It would leave out Iran even. And what Trump's saying is everyone gets a slice of this Gaza Strip to rebuild it. Now, I don't know about his plan of moving everyone out and moving. I think that seems. I think the majority of the workers should be Palestinians, right? They get the training on how to build, how to be construction contractors there. Then Turkey, I don't think Turkey, sorry, is not going to be able to help too much. They have a lot of work in Syria of rebuilding Syria. That's going to take all of I think all of their rebuilding efforts and everything that they have. So they would be I think a great country to help. But if every country in the world, in my opinion, gets in there, sorry, my original point was that these talking heads and then they're like, no, let's let the Palestinians rule themselves. Well, they haven't really ruled themselves. When Hamas got in there, they got one election and then they stopped elections. They said no more. And they did horrible things to keep the people suppressed, and the UN did nothing. There was no mandate. Not one time did I see that they actually went in there and tried to fix at least how the Palestinians can literally rule themselves. They weren't. It was a group that was ruling them with like a very, very spiked iron fist. And we've seen what happened. October 7th, it's not just that there was 1,200 people. Just by numbers, it's how, right? And I personally think, bygones be bygones. Let that, to relive that and make the people of Palestine have to look at the destruction of what happened then all the time doesn't make sense to me. I personally think you have to be able to move forward. And America figured it out. If you get an international place of all kinds of international people, the people themselves will make a bond. If you have them always separate, it's going to continue. And it's like you said, it's an operation, it's a mission, it's a project, a definite start and a definite finish. Now it'll be. So all these talking point heads, I just honestly thought none of them were good. Now I won't stump for the person because I don't know if they even want me mentioning them, that I watch them. So it's, he probably doesn't even like me. So I won't. But of all the talking heads, I'm like punching holes through. And there's a talking head, affectionately, I mean it like that. Like, I don't know what else to call them. Like, the people with opinions, the opinion talking heads. It's the guy with the pirate hat who I follow and watch. He consistently comes up with very good, balanced opinions, and it's like, harder to find. I don't want to say fault because it's just an opinion. There's no fault in an opinion. But I can't be like, well, this instantly I have something. It's like, well. And then I'm going to take his point. His point was like, yeah, I can go in, but it's going to be a mess. It could be a big trouble. And I think that's it. Will the Palestinians support it? That's the big question. Will the people there, are they going to be instantly all over it? The problem is with the Palestinians there now is it's in rubble. It's destroyed. They have not much weapons left in the area. It's small arms and stuff. Yes, of course, it'll all be able to come back in, but it'll have to be a rebuild. And if the Americans are there, it's a different scenario. Israeli army is, there's nothing against them. But when it comes to like grunt meat of patrolling and stuff, America has the numbers. They just can overwhelmingly put the numbers. And if, in my opinion now, so first I'll say that, this point, of the talking heads, the pirate hat had the best one. And I'm like, why is he consistently? But that's just the case. It doesn't matter. My point here, the first point is, it doesn't matter where, who looks at this thing. It matters the opinion, not, the looks of it. Because I'm like, consistently, I continually go back. Good morning, Tommy. You? Yeah, me. Volume is low. I'll turn it up a bit more again. Is that better? Oh, I'm in the red line, though. I don't want to go on the red line. So, okay. So that's basically my quick gist of talking heads. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It's fine one that you can't find debate holes of, and that's, the left media right now is in turmoil, and they saying Trump will go to jail and all these stuff. It just doesn't. I personally think the Americans, they built a lot of bases around the Middle East since the first Bush, and actually before that, but like really big bases. These are huge bases, and they're empty. Okay, they're empty and they're waiting, and they're paying each country money. Okay, this is what's happening, just to hold it. So if something happens again in the Middle East, which What are the chances? They have all these bases, and no names, they're there though. Okay, just know they're there, and they're being maintained, paid to be maintained. Well, if they were to go into Gaza and build a major super base there, they won't have to pay anybody. First of all, they'll just have it there, and it could be a base from the rest of the Middle East, shoring up. And the other individual mentioned, yeah, you have to go into Israel, and it probably would, because the Gaza Strip is so small. It would have to take portion of Israel, and maybe even the Sinai, right? Just as an AOR, an area of responsibility. Not, see, the way he said it, take is the wrong word. I believe it should be, you know what I mean? Just build bases, and then once the Palestinian state finally is rebuilt, first it has to be rebuilt, but once that, well then, yeah, you have to start paying the money to hold your land there. But for the first 10 years or 15 years it's going to take to build. Now, the UN said it's going to take 21 years to rebuild the rubble. Now, like, again, if you're sitting there going, sitting there drinking your morning cup of joe, like sitting there like that, and everything around you is destroyed, you're going to be angry. That person, over time, can be susceptible to extremism. But if they're waking up with hope every day, there's a job, there's a guy looking around for workers, and he's like, hey, what are you doing there, a coffee drinker? Here, come on with me, I got something for you. You know, if that's happening, distracted minds, things move forward in a good way. It more likely, the chances are better that we won't see what happened again. It actually could. And then with the international community going, they did this with Germany. When the Marshall Plan, they went into Germany, and Germany kind of was a bunch of terrors, right? After World War I, they kind of were. They rebuilt themselves, and then they went and attacked again. Surprise! Well, after the Marshall Plan, it was like, no, the world is going in here. We're going to help you rebuild. Every one of you is going to help us rebuild. But we're going to rebuild. We're going to give you tons of money. And then what happened? Germany's like, they toe the line of America's line more than other countries do. Way more. Same what happened with Croatia. Croatia was the same thing. It had destruction. They got major money, American money in there, and American engineers and stuff like that, and they rebuilt. A lot of what they destroyed personally was destroyed. And Croatia is one of the most staunch allies of, they're not a huge superpower, but when America says something, they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure. Croatia has been in places, you know what I mean, in American trouble spots where America was, you would be surprised. Like, really? Croatia's there? Yeah, because they're like, hey, whatever. You helped us when we needed you. They're there. And that's what I'm thinking what needs to happen in Palestine. That's why I think it could work. First, it has to be personally, and like the pirate hat said, and I just don't want to say his name, but he's like, yeah, it could be a lot of trouble. And I think that's where the international community, first, American security, get rid of all these UXO, unexploded bombs. There's probably lots, because that's what happens. They don't always explode. They just land soft. And, get rid of that. That needs military might. And the civilian might they can do those landmines and stuff like that. They have all kinds of good companies. But to do large bombs and stuff like that, that's military. You really need military. And the Israelis ain't going to do it. No way are they going to do it. Who's going to do it? The people from Palestine, they're going to learn how to get rid of these huge bombs. And what will happen to some of these bombs, right? Next thing you know, it's a problem waiting to happen. And at the same time, so the UN says it's going to cost $1.2 billion to clean up all the rubble, 21 years. Well, $1.2 billion? That's less than what we're spending on the border per year. And that's the new spending. So, my problem is the last way was done. It wasn't working. And an international community coming together, first with America, proving that they can secure it, and of course it would be a very, very tough mission. We know this. Everyone knows it would be tough. And like you said, it has to. I agree with the pirate hat. It's like, yeah, you have to have, because it's such a narrow area. They would have to also have part of Israel just for their base, for their base itself. And the Israelis would have to listen, and you know what I mean, have to also be like, yeah, okay. Now displacement of people and all this stuff, like there's a big problem with. I am not, this is above my pay grade, not my thought. I'm just saying, I personally do not think going to do the same thing with United Nations paying for coloring books that were very horrible for 6-year-olds. Coloring books that were like, oh, why are you teaching the children this? And the UN paid for this? This is, if American soldiers and boots are on the ground, they're not gonna be all over the place. They're the grunts, not the Marines. The Marines are the type of force you need to settle things. The Marines are those guys, okay? They're not the grunts. What they need is like not the 101st. You need just regular infantry guys, soldier guys, to just do the walk around. A lot of that it needs to be in huge numbers, and to help clean up, to help this and that, to help police, to help build water supply, just to secure areas. The Marines are they're the brass. They're the ones that that's what the Marines are. And at first, of course, they're the first in, kind of people, last out kind of people. Those are the ones, yeah. But I think he would need a huge force, and that needs a political will. Now, can Trump get the political will? I don't know. He's gotten pretty darn good political will already. He's gotten other countries to act as if he's their president in unconventional ways. But he definitely did. Like, there's no doubt about it. So, yeah, like I said, the talking heads, there's all kinds of places where you can get the information. And I think right now the left media is in turmoil. And it's like time to like look, if you're, left leaning, and I'm more center. I think the center is a good place because both sides are a little bit on the edges, are a bit angry, I think. The left on their fringe, like the Antifa fringe is beyond legal, I think. And they're angry people. And the right, they're beyond angry too. The people that are like, oh, gay people must die. Like, come on. This, to me, the center. And but the left media, I think, is in such turmoil that if you're more of a libertarian, it's more look for individual heads out there that make a lot of sense to you, I think. I think that's the problem with having with the media. And the media the left media has to start grabbing these people and hiring them, putting pirate hat, working for CNN. Maybe don't allow his pirate. I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't want to. He's not an odd individual. It's just he's not a suit, right? And but doesn't matter. The point is, I'm more. But the proof of the pudding, and the pudding is like, I can't poke holes in an argument instantly. That to me is like, well, you got respect. You have it. I have to give it, whether I like to or not. Okay, no moderation. All right, so we have that's what I discussed that today. Trump has made unity in Canada. We had the free radical of, you can check out the post, the free radical of, actually I'll read it. Yes, me. I did a little post of silly rhymes. Obviously I'm not. And we're gonna look at Doug Carney. He has a speech he just did. We'll see what happened with that. It looks like Carney is gonna win it. I think Carney is gonna win it. That most likely, because his resume, right? His resume is really good. But he's gonna need Freeland. If the Liberals better hope Freeland doesn't leave, because she's the more attack politician that Mark Carney isn't. Mark Carney may be a good leader in this and that, but definitely when it comes to politicking, the part of like the talking head part, and if the Conservatives do win, you're going to need people that are going to be vicious for question period to help build your numbers. It just, it's the BS part of politics in Canada, but it's important. And Mark Carney is not very strong in that, and I don't see him getting stronger in that yet, because as he filters his questions, doesn't answer. He's very deft at adapt, very good at weaving on questions. You got to now in this climate of politics, you got to be like you got to be more like Trump, bang right on, because that's what's winning right now. So it's winning the hearts and minds. So Doug Ford, the king of the hot mic, looks to be increasing his supermajority. With though we'll need a vacay after all these work days, I am sure he won't get till summer. So he did a hot mic, and he's like, he got caught hot mic. He's like, oh, I was all for Trump until he fucking did this tariff thing. You know, the tariffs are down. They're dropped down. Canada, I think, is now okay. Trump, whatever your rulings say, we're pretty much going to do. As long as they don't go beyond, as long as they don't step beyond the lines, you know, of citizenry and stuff like that. And I think it's a win. It's actually kind of a win-win, really. That Trump's got the people on the Mexican border, 10,000 soldiers. We got a whole bunch of people here. We have 1.2 billion. There's a plan. There's now a SAR, and I think this is my whole point. I'm going to continue with my thing, but my whole point is that the drug war has been going on since, I don't know, the 80s. I think crack was the first thing that people were like, oh my God, these drugs these are problematic. We've got to do something about it. Well, they haven't done anything. They haven't been able to win any of it. It's just but this new one, this fentanyl, and I don't know everything about it, but when I did research about it just recently, this is like 30 times more potent than regular heroin, and it's cheaper. So this stuff, this is why it's such a problem. So they're saying that these addicts are preferring that over the natural stuff because of cost and potency. And it's you can get just little small amounts of it. It's easy for a trafficker. If it is the scourge, they said 77,000 Americans a year are dying of it. Thousands and thousands of Canadians. More people die that than in the wars lately. It's just unbelievable to me that we're not. And so the only way, and it's like a gateway, right? That drug will lead to you doing all drugs all the time, right? I believe. So thinking that they can just, we'll just continue with the drug wars and just add this to the list. No, you're losing every year. You're losing more and more. I think the only possible way, makes sense to me, is you can focus on the one drug, and get everybody in line. And I mean, like, even the criminal element part of it, say, look at how bad it is. If you're doing that, you're way on the fringe of criminal, because you have to separate it if you want to win. And I think the West needs a win because there's too many people getting lost to this, and then you're out of the work system. And if they are going to build the way I believe that Canada and the States is about to be on a huge, massive building spree, you can't have a huge population of the youth on this drug. They're not. You can't work on that. They're not worker people. At least I don't know enough in the comments or whatever. Let me know. I think it's a problem drug for work. I don't think I would want anyone on heroin working on the factory line. They would slow the line down. Never mind the brain problem. All these other factors. And I'm not about anything but FEC. And the FEC is they can do one. And we know where it's coming from. Like every news agency, well, at least I don't know, we know. The news agencies are saying where it's coming from. The precursors, at least. And this is something you have to have a win. You can't just the 80s under Reagan, they thought they'd just say no. They thought they could win. I think they thought they could, this is 40 years down the line, there's been no wins. It's just putting more and more people in jails. And there's just more and more drugs. It's just losing. This one can be a win. And we can be looking back 10 years from now or whatever, 5-10 years from now, and be like, remember that drug? Yeah, people were on it. There was homeless people. Oh, no. It could be that way. In the 80s, it happened in New York. That and only by city, it was such a high crime, and murders and stuff like that were really high. Well, they got it down. They actually got it down. So things can win if you, my opinion. All right. So So Doug was caught hot miking. Like remember when he was okay, so I'll say, the last hot camera was when Doug was caught helping dig out a snowbow in Ontario. Classic Canadian moment. He was like it was a snow someone got their camera out. Someone got stuck in the snow. We had like a blizzard or something, and he helped them out. And that was a hot moment. That was a hot camera moment. It was perfect. It helped him, I think, politically. It's a good moment. This other one, like him, like, oh, I was all for him until. I think Doug Ford's he's gonna win it. First of all, he was gonna win it anyway because he had the numbers, but the Liberals were in disarray. The Liberal Party was in disarray. New leader, nothing. The NDP, they're in disarray as well in Ontario. So he was gonna win it anyway, but. With moments like hot mics like this and things like that, he's taken it over. That it's almost like almost feel bad for the other ones. There's no contest. I've been seeing a lot of things, and it's not anything. He's just his timing was very well planned. He did it well. He was at the leader of a thing, and he got a win so far. And it's going to be a win. We're looking at everyone saying he got what he wanted. The next time he asks for something in 30 days, most likely it's just going to happen. They're not going to fight him on it. They're going to be like, okay, what do you need? 3 bags full. Hopefully it ain't, Okay, so Mo is really getting popular, and it makes me enjoy the Saskatchewan flag for sure. Premier Mo, he's been out there doing his speeches and stuff like that, and it's also been helping. Like it's getting people focused on politics, and to me, this is always a good thing. The more people that pay attention to politics, the many hands make light work. Trump has even scared me, though I have little in my life but hope for more. So, fear's a little rich. Though the premier of Newfoundland was all unity buff, it was nice to see unity in all our lands for once. And that's exactly what I truly believe, that we were very unified under Ford, because we don't really kind of have a prime minister, but under Ford, the premiers got together. And there's a thing that the Knesset, or I don't know exactly who does it, but it's kind of a Jewish thing, okay? At least that's what I read somewhere. You always have one, you have everyone there, unity, and then there's always one. So like 99% are there. And then there's one person who's like, has to be the designated person to say, no, I don't agree. Because they have to be able to look at it from a different angle. And she was that one in this case. She did a very good job of it and carved out a little bit of the oil, the energy. She gave a different angle. And that was, I don't know if it was a part of the plan, but it to me looked like it. And it was very, very well done. In my opinion, as the brilliant has one thinking you could all be wrong. Oh yeah, as the brilliant has one thinking you could all be wrong. Premier Smith was one hell of a wordsmith and gave the Mar-a-Lago, a chance to see Canadian-made beauty all draped in oil. And that's what she gave, that different argument, and it showed. There was a carve out for the oil. They seen the other side of it. And for her personally, Alberta is so much aligned with Trump. It would have been very hard on her career if she would have been in line with the rest of the premiers, at least even standing there beside them and saying nothing. It wouldn't have done her very well. It would have not helped her rule or reign in her political reigning in Alberta. It just given her more trouble. It would have not been good. This way, it worked out. Doug got the unity he needed. She got the people that normally would be screaming at her, quiet. Everyone is happy. And now there's no tariffs. And there's been a huge upswelling of pride in Canada. Like Canadian pride is it's bigger today than it was before the tariffs. This is what Trump did. He did it from the outside. He did a very good job, whether you like it or not. Okay. Yeah, the cartel thing. They're going to be claimed as terrorist organization. It doesn't matter. You can claim them anything you want. If the government doesn't do anything and act anything about it, we'll see about that in the weeks to come. But I don't see the Trudeau regime doing action besides, okay, they're gonna do the czar. I think what they're gonna do is they're going to get the fentanyl czar. He's gonna do things. They're gonna work on the one drug. But as far as the cartel, I don't see any movement besides they declared them a terrorist entity. Now that's a big deal. Now that means that the military and intelligence can snoop into their stuff, right? Now, will there be action? I don't know. Under this government, I don't see it. I honestly don't see them doing much. Maybe tranche two, when Trump goes back and says, okay, you got to bolster your military. Hopefully that happens, because when Trudeau said, like, publicly hot mic, that Canada will never do the 2% to the military, that was kind of it was a shot across the bow, because that's the military spending and stuff like that. A lot of that goes into America because they make the stuff. And us as well. We have a lot of companies, but and it was kind of like, well, yeah, we signed it, but, and that I don't think that's going to be okay for that long. As the world, maybe it's getting calmer. We'll see, but it isn't yet, right? Now, okay, yeah, the addict thing. I think that we need to do personally. It's not just hitting the drug bust. You have to do something with the addicts. So if you're on the street, there's no way you're gonna. I don't think I can convince anybody to get off drugs. If you're living on the street, why would I bother saying, hey, well, you should get off drugs, and here's a pamphlet. This is just a waste of everybody's time, mine and theirs. So they are living on the street in the winter, drugs will help them get through it. I don't agree with it, but you're asking, you know what I mean? You might as well ask the door to give you money. The door ain't going to give you any money. It's not a bank machine. So that if you don't have the beds, if you don't have the place to put them, to like get them in a at least at a place of hope, a place where they can feel hope. You're never going to feel hope in a tent in a park in the street where you, like, down the street from where you were born. You're never going to get that person to feel hope. They're always going to be in that world of hurt. And I believe that the best way, I think, was build camps up north, and where we need to build these new roads for a lot of these reserves and stuff like that. Use the manual labor. Have it as a work fair program. Get the people working. And okay, you're only going to get 3 hours of work out of them until months down the road, and then you're probably going to have like a very good civil engineering road building crews. And if anyone who knows about building roads in the Arctic, there's a lot of work. First, you got to clear the land. First, you got to make it so there's a trail, a walking trail, or like a little bobcat trail, at least that. And that takes a lot of clearing, a lot of burnings, and this. You can use all bulldozers and huge heavy machinery, but a lot of manual labor could also be it. And I personally think it should be should not be a necessarily voluntary. There's a lot of homeless people, and it could be used as a, hey, and myself would go on this. It would be put as a good program, I believe, to instead of putting the people in jail, because that's what's happening. That's what basically happened. You're living in a tent. The person needs drugs one day. What do? They go steal something or whatever. They vandalize something. They do something not good. They yell at a passerby because they're in a really bad place. They're in the same place as you, but then in their mind, they're not in the same place. Then we put them in jail, and then they just do nothing, right? Probably go to crime school, right? Some people come out okay, but it's just a revolving door. But I think that if we use that as a labor and also as a get off drugs program, I think that's the only way we can move forward as a country. And it's awful. It hurts my feelings when I see tents in my parks. I'm like, oh, and I'm a guy. What about the woman walking? You know what I mean? Walking her like her 10-year-olds and stuff like that. How does she feel? Like, this is like not good. It's not. I'm a guy who, like, yeah, all right, you know what I mean? Coming at me. I don't care if I live or whatever. But these people are like, you know what I mean? It's hurting people that it shouldn't be. It's hurting the family people. It's like, well, let's not take our kids there. Let's go drive to another park, because remember, there's the tents there. Like, just not go to that place for a picnic. There's Needles. There's a place That I like this the view of the lake there, and it's near the Niagara River, right on the edge by the lake and stuff. Well, I sitting there, and there's needles. I'm like, holy crap! I don't want to sit here anymore. I'm not going to sit here. If I'm not going to sit there, well, the whole families are gone, and that's just to me is harmful to society more than anything else. It's and then harmful to the people. Why do these people have to be? Because of our housing is so much money. I think we should be able to clean it up. And I'm going on a tangent. I think we should clean up. Good morning from the west. I think we should clean it up, and by building these camps up north, away from the cities, get the people off the drugs program. Look at 38%. Danielle Smith, Premier Smith, has gotten the overdose deaths 38% down in 1.5 years. And their programs are a lot of their tough love ones. Get them to these things, these work programs. There's all kinds of things that they're doing, and none of them are giving people drugs. That's just, and if it's trying to make them safe so they're eliminated from society and so they're not stealing, it isn't working, because crime only goes up in these areas where they're giving out free drugs. Apparently, they give them these free drugs, and they're like, well, I don't like this. It's not strong enough. And then they go sell it for fentanyl or whatever. I don't know. They go sell the drugs that the government's giving to anybody, right? And then they're going to buy their street drug. It's creating a system, and that's enough of that. It's my opinion. It means nothing. I just really think that that as a society, we should be looking at wholesome ways to clean people up, and also sick the religious people on them, because religion works, whether you like it or not. Religion works. It's worked for thousands of years to calm people, to get people in line, and of course you can't just do one faith. We know what happens there. That leads to trouble as well. And they can't be running the place. They can be. I think they should be invited. Every great faith, every faith that Canada has said, okay, you're a faith. We recognize your faith, whatever they are. They should be invited to these camp areas to help indoctrinate these people in their religions. I think that's, whether you're liking that, it's better than them living in a tent waiting to die. That's basically what's happening. They're waiting to die, and the economy is... Anyway, that's my opinion on it, and I think Danielle Smith, the Premier Smith, has proven that they're going in that direction, and it's working. BC has gone in, let's give everybody drugs, and it's making the problem worse. It's kind of, to me, I think it's blaringly obvious, but... And also, if we are to build the country, which most likely is going to happen, we're going to be the Asia's starving, screaming. Now, they said the TransCanada, I heard from Williamson, MP Williamson, the environment minister, said half of the oil from the TransCanada, which is going out west, right, the only line, half of it's going to California, the oil. Half. Asia, Philippines right now is like screaming. They're paying very, very high prices, so we can make a good income sell off it. They're asking for, they need energy, they need the oil. China, of course. Indonesia, same thing. They don't, all those countries, a lot of them are out there, they all have like very, very modern cities, and they're all starving for energy. And we it's a possibility that we could be the ones providing it if we have a mass building project that ships it off. It's not nice, and it's not good in a lot of ways, but we can get the people to work the oil and get the oil pumping from around the world. You know what I mean? There's like disaster teams, and that could be used for that. I agree with the work program treatment idea. I've lived with them. Oh yeah, you're right, 100%. Okay, so sorry, Edmund said, I don't know your name, but I agree with the work program treatment idea, but I've lived with them. It's going to be an uphill battle against theft and desertion. Okay, so what's going to happen is, that's why I think is the camp and a hope. You have to give them hope there, not disparity. You can't put them in a place where there's a bunch of rockers doing the drugs and tell them, hey, you can get off drugs. No. That's why I believe to have them in an isolated place. That's why I mean way the heck. Where that Ring of Fire road is like the closest city is like 50,000 people, 100, 200 miles away. Yeah, of course they'll leave. Of course. Can't have, and I don't even think you need to have the fence. You give people a good bed, a good safe, concrete walled bedroom, doesn't have to look pretty, but concrete walled bedroom in a safe spot. You give them church, you give them food, of course, simple, plain food. You give them faith, hope, and you give them a possible 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day. You can't ask for miracles, okay? You 2 hours a day. That's 2-3 hours. I've seen it. I tried to do it with people, and beyond that, you're going to run into trouble. Now, from there, you can get a workforce that will be able to do the 8-hour day in time, right? But to me, I believe that it's not about getting the free work. It's about getting them off the drugs. It's a bonus getting the free work. Eventually, it'll come, and that will have to be worked from individuals, right? Some people may never be able to work an 8-hour day again. Maybe they won't ever come. They won't have a come to Jesus moment, right? Maybe. But as long as it's a safe spot where it's not being, I've seen these places, these treatment centers, they're like still run by the heavies. They walk out. Where are they? They're in the part of town. They're in a very dangerous part of town. The one individual said, "I'm leaving." He went to go live in a place he could afford. He was back because it's a huffle there. They're like, I'm going to be back on drugs because of where I'm going to have to go. This is the cycle system. They're basically, put it, and until a person, it's going to take a year or so to get them totally off and then to be back in society. But they have to have a new place, maybe a job to go to leave the camp after 2-3 years. That's, there's such big numbers. And if we are going to be building, there's going to need a lot of manual labor. And we're not there yet. So, yeah, I agree with you. No fences, nothing. Camps up in bears and stuff like that. It doesn't, to me, it has to be done in that way. You have to take people out of the element and then put them back in after they're okay. This idea of keeping them in the element and getting better. No, the wolves are still there. The dealers are still there. So they get out, they get a little bit of money. Those dealers are looking like, oh, pray. He just came out of a detox center. He's prey or she's prey. That's what's happening. I think it's a battle cycle. We've got to get them out and back into a job of hope. So someone who dropped out of high school has a place of hope. Usually they say people with trades and stuff like that, or university degrees and stuff like that. They are the highest percentage of people who get off of a cycle of alcoholism or whatever. Because they have somewhere to hope for. So someone who's dropped out of high school, who's never worked a real job, that's given them there's a drug, and everyone who's worked, there's a drug you get from satisfaction of work. It's a drug. You go home and at the end of the day, you're looking at what you did. You leveled out some ground. You're like, that's some other person be like, that's nothing. Well, to that person is like, yeah, look what I did today. They go home and have a sense of pride. It's a drug, and it's free. But a lot of the people, I think, just didn't, you know what I mean? They haven't had that for so long, they forgot about that drug, the natural one, the one when you score a goal in whatever sport you play, that natural one. And so they're just going to give them time to do it. And I think at the same time, you have to give them work. And a lot of times a trade. Now, not everybody, like I said, there's like tradesmen and stuff like that in the programs that are like homeless and stuff. Lawyers and accountants even now, now that there's different programs. But I think for the majority, which is like the 80-20, the 80% who dropped out of high school, who basically, have no idea of work, that's where the only way it works. And at the same time, they are a benefit to society. So when they come back, say they did 3 years up north building roads up north, they come back and they're, the people around them like, oh, you did that, and they're interested and they're like, oh, and they have stories of work that people will respect them for. I think that's it. To bring people back into society instead of like, saying, well, we don't need to have manual labor people in our country anymore. That's what they do up north in these work camps. Yeah, they have fences and stuff like that. I think it's yeah. Excuse me, but I personally don't think fences would ever work. They have to want to get out of it. They have to want to stay there, you know. And anything would be better than sleeping in the despair that they're living in on the street most of the time, right? And of course, drugs. It'll always be a mess. Nothing will be perfect. But I think that Danielle Smith, for the last time I'm repeating it, they fixed it. They found a good answer. Okay, so there's my silly little rant. Okay, on Gaza, basically I did that. I think Trump's plan is outstanding. The Americans are the only people with the amount of might to initially go in and secure the area. I don't think a good idea to have 21 years of rubble is anything but, unless you want to create more terrorists. It's a really good way of creating terrorists. Take away people's hope, make them look at the destruction caused by their neighbors, you know. Makes angry people, you know. And then who's going to go in there? It's going to be the people that are going to prey on them as people. I think solving the problem with America is the way first. And then once America makes safe the area, then it's time to invite France and Germany and even China. Even let China have a little quarter, you know? And everyone has a quarter, and the Palestinians obviously come back. It's their land, and you know what I mean? But I don't know. You can't let Iran take it again. You know, take it with their money. That's what'll happen if you keep it in rubble and you give money to the UN. The UN did not do a good job last time. I don't see them having a better plan this time. And all of their neighbors as well. Their neighbors did not help. They made them angry people. Sorry. They helped by taking some of them in, but that's not really a solution either. You know, I think it's making into a metropolis of like great proportions. Make it a New York. If it's like New York, you know, the Riviera, what have you, the Paris of the Mediterranean. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. All right. Get this thing working here. All right. Just going to, I got to take the camera off for a second. Because it's going slow. Oh, wow. Yeah, so that basically, you have to use the plug-in mouse. They're screwing with me a little bit. Basically, the liberal leadership race is I'm gonna have to go plug-in mouse. Carney, it looks like I'm gonna put up the video of Carney right now, and that's about that. And yeah, well. Oh, actually, first of all, we got someone else speaking here, so I'm gonna just fast forward it a little bit. Oh, okay, here we go. So it looks like I said, hey, Freeland, maybe if there's a debate, Freeland may get in there. But personally, I honestly think that that it's all Carney because the conservatives are basically building up Carney because they probably think he's a better. I don't know why, but he's most likely going to be the winner. I think the conservatives are right that he's going to win it. He's got the numbers of MPs. He's got the people, like the liberals behind him, and it's the liberals that are voting. So he's most likely going to be prime minister for a day or whatever. Um, we'll see what happens, and never count. Everyone's like, well, the conservatives are going to win for sure. Okay, so everyone's always like, well, the liberals are going to win. Well, the liberals should have lost the last two under Scheer. The polling had Scheer winning. Under O'Toole, they had him winning during the election. He was like way ahead at one point. It was like, oh, he won. And then things changed. The liberal election machine is the better of the two, right? Off season, we'll call it off season during like when things are going on. The conservatives are the winners every time, because they're like the money managers, or the people that are they'll do the hard things and say the hard things and have a better solution, more practical. I mean, not better, but more practical solution, where the pie in the sky, or you know what I mean. I don't want to say like they could think, but those type of ideas in election time, when your aspirations and all that stuff, when you're like Caesar, when those things are coming, the liberals got it every single time. The NDP go too far, in my opinion. Why they'll never get in with their ideas. Once election happens, they're like, well, everyone will get money and everyone will get this, and then we'll give food to everyone for free. You know, they do that too many times, and you're like, oh. Um. But they have the NDP have such a strong base that they'll always do very good. They have a very strong base, so I always respect that. But when it comes to like who's going to lead, unless the NDP change, but who's going to lead during election time, it's the liberals have a plan always that's superior. At least every election I've watched, even in the states, the Democrat versus Republican, Trump is the first Republican, and he's really a Democrat in hiding. But he's obviously running the Democrat Party like a Republican. He's running the Republican Party like a Republican, though I think he would be leaning more Democrat if you know. But the Democrats have usually a better game, and now last time they didn't as much because Trump was just they attacked Trump with old ideas. Oh, we'll just smear him. The smear campaign that will besmudge his character didn't work. It was actually against it. Then there was a tax on him, right? Of course he was going to win, but when you look at the other things, they were bringing in the stars and stuff like that. That normally would have worked, but right now we're at a point where I think America's not listening to the stars and stuff like that the way they used to. There's too many up and comers that are also stars in their own right. Like they're the one that people are listening to, and they're not listening to the old machine stars. Not on this round, because everyone's seeing that their money and their thing, everything's going farther, and they're not feeling the pain, and they're pretending that the left was not feeling the pain and telling them you don't feel pain. They're like, no, my arm hurts. It hurts. And they're like, no, you don't. I'm like, yes, I do. No, you don't. And they're like, yes, I do. That's exactly what basically happened. But normally it would have, that machine that they spent, the $2 billion and all that money and stuff, we normally would have worked. But Trump had it brass tacks type of down. He won legal fight after legal fight. And he was pretty good. He did pretty good. He was pretty quiet during those legal fights. He did attack a little bit, but not normal Trump. If he would have been normal Trump and gone off the whatever, the rails or whatever, like he wanted to, no doubt. His lawyer, I think, was like holding back the bull as best as he could, best as he could. he would have not done himself any favors. But he did. He held back. He held himself in check, mostly. He kept quiet. He got in a little bit of trouble, but he kept quiet and won. And then everyone was like, yeah, well, I guess he can lead. I guess he can. I think that was it. Like, he didn't. I think the left was expecting him to be Trump, and he didn't do Trump. He played, he played it cool, and that was it. But normally the liberal machine is, always wins it. And remember, anyway, so that's it. But the liberals here, so I don't look at the polls before they go in, except I love polls and they're exciting. It's like watching a score. I don't advocate not looking at polls. I advocate to look at them because it's fun. It makes it more exciting, right? Which argument points are working and who's up and who's down. But once the election is dropped, like when they drop the needle, like that wonderful song, "Drop the Needle," it's the left. They got something in their works, and there's always something that usually, especially in Canada, they're the ruling party for so many years, for a long time, for good reason, really good reason. It was just a really good country. I mean, a really good election campaign, and then we are a good country as well. But that's the one thing. Gotta always admit it. And you already look at it. The liberal polling, they're a lot more up than they were before the thing started. Now, once Carney gets in, Carney is very calm, cool, collected. He's ran away from the carbon tax. He says, no, carbon tax is we're no longer going to tax the people. On that, they're going to do the industry. He's probably going to have some plans. His numbers, he'll bring it closer, and it's not. Alberta, Saskatchewan, it looks like, and half of BC are basically like, yeah, we're conservative. But once he says we're going to drop the drug plan because it's stupid, there's going to be more people in BC that are going to be like, yeah, we agree with you, because they're more naturally going into liberal, the people in BC. They're more libertarian type. And I think Pierre's going to win it. It's his to lose. Personally, I think he is. There's no way, and unless he gets too angry or whatever, I don't know. It's his to lose. Definitely has a win on it because time to flip. But don't count them out. I don't think so. Okay, so I went on. Nope, not that guy. Okay, so let's put on this video. If I can find out how to do this. Oh, yeah. Oh, Jamie Batista. He has pulled out of the race. And okay, here's Mark Carney. Oh, I'll get the volume for you people.
In front of this magnificent structure and great symbol. Alors qu'on est réunis ici aujourd'hui sur les territoires traditionnels des nations autochtones et devant un symbole évident de la proximité entre deux pays, le pont international de Gordie Howe. On se répète si elle
Gordie Howe Bridge
for Canadians.
Okay.
The world has changed, and we too must change to realize the full promise of our great country. Since I launched my campaign a few weeks ago, I've heard from people across the country that they too want change. Les gens veulent du changement parce qu'ils sont inquiets. Inquiets du coût de la vie et de la crise du logement. Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes veulent une vie décente et abordable. Ils sont inquiets pour les jeunes d'ici et leur avenir. Les Canadiens et les Canadiennes veulent que leurs enfants aient les mêmes chances qu'eux. Ils sont inquiets que l'équilibre en matière d'immigration. Et les Canadiens et les Canadiennes veulent un pays juste, autant pour ceux et celles qui arrivent que pour ceux et celles
The mic here.
qui sont déjà ici. Et ils s'inquiètent de l'avenir du Canada face aux menaces de Président Trump, un monde plus dangereux et divisé. Change with a plan that stands up for Canada and creates an opportunity for all Canadians. Canadians want change with a new, positive leadership that ends division and builds together. Now, I'm not a politician. I am a pragmatist. And so if I see something that's not working, I will change it. And that's why last week I proposed a new climate policy, eliminating the consumer carbon tax, having large polluters pay Canadians to make climate-smart choices, and helping our countries leapfrog their American competitors in global markets. Canada needs more of this type of change. Change that puts money in people's pockets. Change that makes our companies more competitive. Change that builds the strongest economy in the G7. Now we face a very different world to one we've known all our lives. A world in which Americans have become more our neighbors than our good friends. And it can feel bewildering at first, but if we take control, it will be empowering. And here's how we do that. We need to distinguish between what we can't change, what we can influence, and what we can and must change to build an even better Canada. On doit comprendre ce qu'on ne peut pas changer. On ne peut pas changer le fait qu'il y aura toujours des chocs.
I think this so far is his best speech yet, ever. He's been practicing. His French is choppy, but it's whoa. The first time I heard it, it was like, ooh, man, I speak better Latin than he did, and I don't speak Latin.
Comme tant de Canadiens et Canadiennes l'ont fait ces derniers temps. Face aux menaces externes, c'est notre solidarité et notre détermination qui nous ont permis d'obtenir un bon résultat cette semaine. We need to understand what we can influence. Look, the world is being fundamentally transformed. The old rules-based order is finished, but a new one, a new system, has not yet emerged. And Canada should now work with like-minded nations to create a trading system that is consistent with our values and that builds our prosperity. Whether we can influence President Trump is debatable, but I think we can, if we listen to what Americans want and respond in ways that are best for Canada. However, we need to be crystal clear about our bottom lines. This proud country will never be part of the United States in any shape or form.
Hear, hear.
Nous devons comprendre ce que nous pouvons et devons changer. Le Canada est de personnes change our government to become innovatrice. We can and must change our government to become more effective. Canadians deserve a government that works for them, a government that's focused on outcomes, not spending, a government that spends less and invests more. In the coming weeks, I'll propose a new approach to federal budgeting that will save precious taxpayer dollars while catalyzing the enormous investments that Canada needs to fully realize.
Okay, so takeaways of the speech so far: pragmatic. Okay, Chrétien, Paul Martin especially was a pragmatic leader. I liked Paul Martin. He didn't last very long. The Liberal Party ate him alive when he was prime minister. Ugh. But I thought it was a most horrible thing. But pragmatic. He said carbon tax. He's saying we can work with Trump we can guide or influence, lean on Trump. He believes he can, which I think is right. As long as we, like he said, as long as we listen to what Americans want, like, don't fight them. Don't fight them the way you did on the first round, and it didn't work this time. Fighting Trump, like in a boxing match, you're gonna lose. He wants this, and like he said, seeing what the Americans want. And what did the Americans want this round? They wanted to secure their border because the Americans voted on it. And they what do they want? They want 10,000 soldiers on the Mexican side. They want some Canada, because what happened? America had to pull people from their northern border, their northern border, our southern border, and put them down south. So they're weaker on their northern border. So they use like, hey, you guys got to shore this stuff up for us, or do your part, whatever you want to say it, however you want to look at it. And so fighting them, all of a sudden, instantly fighting them, saying, oh, no, Trump. Well, that was not a good plan. It was like more, I think the better plan is that eventually they came to, obviously, was, okay, you have a problem with fentanyl that's killing so many Americans. We're 77,000 a year is unbelievable. It's like a city. A city a year is wiped out. It's too much. And how many are not dying, doing it for decades and decades? They're basically wiped out of society, but they're still living, They haven't OD'd. Horrible way to have a country. So he said, you need to do that. We did these things instead of fought them. And what happened? Trump, boom, tariffs gone, 30 days. So he's most likely going to have another ask. And I think that's going to be the military. He just gave us signals of what he wants to do. He wants to have peace in the Middle East, lasting peace in the Middle East. And the old way of doing things, the rinse and repeat isn't working. We know this. It doesn't work. And anyone who says it's working has interests and money interests, I believe. So I think if we're not in line with the next military thing that he just suggested yesterday, Canada's probably going to have more problems. I think that we should get ahead of it and be saying, okay, Trump, you want to secure it, Canada will go in there with you. We will build the bridge. We will build the dock, because there's no docks there right now, like, you know what I mean? We will build the dock so the ships can come, a permanent one for your plan, right? That way, very limited potential harm on Canadians, as even the criminal elements of Hamas or whatever that's there will be okay with it, because that's where the aid is going to come in. So, and also you're more protected because you're the water and stuff like that. These terrorist groups don't have huge water assets, more so land. So it limit us. I think that we should get ahead of it in that way. And that's what he said. So he's saying, don't fight with them. See what the American people want, and move forward with that. And then he took a couple conservative talking points, saying we're going to lower spending. And it's not. And this is one really good argument Pierre has had. It's that the Liberals have justified, or not justified, they've said, look at how good our plan is. It's $1 billion. Well, yeah, $1 billion, but when you have people making $100,000 a year to be a secretary, male, female, or like to take notes and to answer phone calls, well, it's not a great plan, is it? You're overpaying a lot of people to glorify that. Well, I work and help people, for really good money, and you're ripping off the taxpayer. And that's what the Liberal plan thus far has been a lot. They've literally been putting that in the window, saying, well, our window, it cost $1 billion. Of course it's a good plan. No, it is if you're a university-educated aristocrat who makes their bureaucrat, who makes a aristocrat family, or bureaucrat, newly minted university person who's makes money off of these things. Yeah, it's good. They don't care about the outcomes. If they cared about the outcomes, there would not be giving drugs out to drug addicts. There would not be. It's actually exacerbated the problem. But a lot of people are making a lot of money off of it, so it's a good plan. And that's what the Liberals have been saying the last 2 years. And every time I hear it, it's like, oh. And then even worse, when Pierre actually caught on to it, and Pierre's like, this is a silly idea. Your argument is silly. And they still used it. Because they're speaking to the aristocrats. They're speaking to the bureaucratic body, if you will. And he's speaking to everyone else, which is the majority, the 80. The 20% is agreeing, oh, yeah, it's an expensive program. Of course it's good because there's lots of work for us. It's what the people are thinking. It's what they're thinking. Where the 80% are like, this is not a good idea. So he just said that. He just basically took another conservative talking point. We're going to shrink the government. We're going to focus on outcomes. We're not going to focus on how much money is spent. He's doing a very good speech. Is anyone else kind of I'm like, ooh, who's this guy and where did he come from? And he says, I'm not a politician. He's playing the Trump play on that one. So let's carry on. I think he's going to give Pierre a run for his money. Like I said, I think it's still Pierre's to lose, but he's going to give him a run for his money, and it's a race now with this speech. Now, if he drives away in a Rolls Royce, it's over. If he goes and walks into that Rolls Royce after this speech, right beside these sea cans in this workplace, and then there's a Rolls Royce that he drives into, it won't do him any favors.
It's its promise. We can and must change how much of your hard-earned money you get to keep. Canada needs a middle-class tax cut, and my government will give them one. Young Canadians need a boost to their incomes so they can catch up after being knocked sideways by the pandemic and the housing crisis. Here, too, my government will deliver. And all Canadians deserve more competition in our economy so that they can get the best value for their hard-earned dollar. We can and must change how we build. This is a pivotal time for our economy, a time to build, and my government would catalyze enormous private investment to build millions of new homes for younger Canadians, to make the AI revolution work for all Canadians, and to build a clean energy superpower that will power, literally, our prosperity. But too often, we've had permitting delays, regulation, and red tape that has stopped or slowed economically critical projects, including ports, mines, and energy infrastructure. We must remove these barriers to spur progress and build for Canadians. I want to be crystal clear about this. My government will use all its powers to protect Canadians and to build in the national interest. The Government of Canada has extraordinary powers at its disposal today to respond to a national crisis. And Donald Trump's aggression against Canadian livelihoods and workers constitutes just such a crisis. And since it's a time to build, we can change how builders are rewarded in this country. That's why I will reverse the government's capital gains tax increase, not least in recognition of the vital role that builders play in shaping our country's future and ensuring we drive investment, innovation, and growth. Je veux être clair. Avec mon leadership, le gouvernement utiliserait tout pour battre les attaques des Canadiens et donc celles des impôts. On reconnaît le Canada, to strengthen our economy and to protect. I will do whatever it takes to strengthen our economy and to protect Canadians. We can and must change so that we have one Canadian economy instead of 13. That means we need to harmonize the tangle of rules and regulations at all levels of governments that have meant that Canada, at least the Canadian economy, is less than the sum of its parts. We must break down barriers between provinces so that all Canadians have full access to our resources. Above all, in a divided world, we must rely more on each other because we are always stronger together. We can and must change our major trading partners. Canada and the United States have the most important commercial relationship in the world, and long may it remain so. But now that U.S. priorities are shifting, we need to change our priorities in ways that work best for Canada. We know we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket. And so, while we should remain closely integrated with the United States in the auto sector, in energy and security, in the new areas that will drive jobs and competitiveness in this century, we must diversify our trading relationships. We should become the essential trading partners of countries that share our values, including the UK, the EU, and leaders in Asia. And we can do so through our leadership in clean energy, in critical minerals, and in the intelligence infrastructure of the AI revolution. We must leverage these strengths for the benefit of Canada and all Canadians. To do so, we have to create supply chain certainty by protecting economically critical infrastructure. And that starts with building and expanding our transportation corridors that connect Canada to global markets from coast to coast to coast. That includes our railways, ports, roads, and bridges, trucking routes, and energy corridors. It will require collaboration and partners with our workers and builders. We want employers to engage early, address issues openly and transparently, and negotiate agreements quickly, ensuring workers and their families are spared unnecessary economic upheaval. But we have to stop holding back our own progress and instead work together to keep Canada moving forward. And finally, we can and must change to make Canada and Canadians more secure. Nous devons améliorer la sécurité des Canadiens et des Canadiennes. Avec mon leadership, le gouvernement atteindra 2% of GDP in NATO. By the end of this, government would work to reach 2% of GDP in defense spending by the end of this decade and pull our full weight in NATO. Nous réaliserons des investissements supplémentaires pour soutenir le travail de détection.
Okay, so he said in 5 years, paying the 2% of NATO, that's a big one. Um, that's a really big one. So he's basically taking conservative talking points. What did you guys say? Yes, he's Golding manifesting Gould. Yeah, I had it on pause. So he's Goldface, whatever. That's some silly TV show that is decades old now, and obviously wasn't a very good manifestation. But the thing is that he's looking at being a pragmatic leader, and Trudeau was all pie in the sky and la di da of like, I don't look at money. And now he's coming in there like the knight with, I don't want to say shining armor, but he's more looking like the knight with the pragmatic armor. And I know that everyone is not um, into the liberals right now because not liking Trudeau on YouTube is a big deal. But as there's a lot of people said, well, maybe there'll be protests here, there'll be protests. These aren't manifesting. It's only online. The rage is online of against the liberal, but offline, the people that aren't on YouTube all the time, it's not there. Though the conservatives are leading in the polls, a lot of those people are leading in the polls because of Trudeau and his no more roads, and we're going to carbon tax everybody and all of these things. I'm not stumping for anybody. I'm just being the one who's, I think, saying the truth out of it. Because if I'm pure conservative, well, of course I'm going to be hiding the truth that this guy's saying some things that are like, yeah, okay, you're going to do the military spending. That's been an ask from NATO. They signed, and he's saying we're not going to just do it in the next 10 years, which is the plan now. He says we're going to do it within 5 years. I think that's still a bit long, but that's just yet another idea of what's happening. That his talking points are pretty good, and Pierre is a great opposition. He is so good at the opposition. I almost think it would be good to keep him there. And I don't, he's going to win. But he would do a very good job against Carney, keeping Carney and the liberals in line and stuff like that. He just would do such a good job at it, as he has, find all the perfect holes. But he's starting to say things that I know he's going to start bringing. Like this speech, I know you people don't like me saying this, but I feel the conservatives, like they just started to go into the hate well. The people that are online, they started to listen to too much. And America isn't Canada, and we're not the same. It's not the same politics, whether you want it or not. It's not. And I honestly think we're going to start seeing some major shift in the polls if he continues this, as long as he doesn't drive away in the Rolls Royce. And like I said, dislike this and that, all this, say all kinds. Oh, gold face, he's gold face. We're gonna pour gold on it. Whatever. It all means nothing. It's just a very 80-20. It's only 20% of the people that are really against everything liberal, and I think majority of Canadians, throughout their lives, have been more liberal leaning throughout the time. Now we're going towards that way, but Trump was a Democrat first, and he really is, I think, more Remember how much trouble he had when he first got in? It's because they knew he was a Democrat thinker. So I really have. I gotta go find my other mouth. Other mouse, because it's really, they got me. They got the wire on me. Okay, so let's see.
De traçage et d'arrêt de développement et la circulation de fentanyl au Canada et tout au long de la frontière. La protection de notre frontière nécessite également une approche sérieuse en collaboration avec les forces policières américaines pour améliorer la détection du trafic d'armes à feu à la frontière. Now, the one thing I've learned over the many years of managing crises is that plan beats no plan. Plans create focus, discipline, and the energy that major changes a crisis demands. And make no mistake, we are in a crisis. We can do little to change the external forces that are causing it, but we can act as Canadians. There's a fever gripping America. And while it rages, Canadians will remain resolute and true to our values. While America engages in a war on woke, Canadians will continue to value inclusiveness. While America shuns the vulnerable, we will continue to show solidarity with one another. While America attempts to turn back the clock, Canadians will build sustainability for future generations. Before America's fever passes, we must seize this moment for Canada. This is the time to change. This is our time to build. This is the time for Canada. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, everyone.
Merci.
And I
Merci, thank you.
merci, and I
We'll
look
now-
forward to taking your questions.
We'll now begin the question period. We'll do one question, one follow-up. Please name your name
You
and
okay back
outlet,
there?
and we'll do 15 minutes. Merci beaucoup. On va maintenant commencer la période de questions. S'il vous plaît, nommez votre nom et votre média. Et nous allons prendre 15 minutes de questions.
Oui, merci. Merci. Bonjour, mon nom c'est Gabriel Nikunana.
Okay.
Mon nom c'est Gabriel Nikunana, journaliste à Radio-Canada.
Bon.
Deux petites questions en français. Appuyez-vous l'idée d'un nouveau pipeline avec l'Est pour acheminer?
Okay, so what do you guys think of that speech? I know. Oh, it's back on, is it? Okay. So hey, whatever happened to that? Isn't there a supposed to be a round 2 of the trucker convoy? I don't see what I mean. Like that didn't come to fruition. All of these things because it's not in Canada right now. The Trudeau resigned. I think Mark Carney is in, and Mark Carney has he literally is a pragmatic person. I think he would be more pragmatic, which meaning he won't be all ideas of like, well, save the environment. Hey, like that's great. It's great to save the environment when everyone's working. Everyone's got a job. Well, then let's do these beautiful aspirations. I'm all for it. Would love to make, milkweed. I'd love to have a milkweed charity and take addicts and stuff like that, get them off drugs, and we go plant milkweed because it's for the butterflies, right? And stuff like that. The monarchy or something. There's an idea for someone. To me, these things are great. That's where we should be. But we have major problems right now in the country. It's first of all, a home is $1 million. I didn't hear him have any solutions for that. I don't think he has a solution for that. Pierre has a couple, but his solution, the Conservatives have a few, though his solutions won't fix the problem. They're better than he has. I don't know what his are. But what the Liberals currently have, it cannot fix the problem. And the Conservatives have one that'll do a better job of it. Oh, he did say one thing. He's going to take off he's going to get more incentive for builders. The problem is these building groups, these building companies, it's just they won't be able to, we don't have enough companies to do it unless you start creating a mom and pop builders group. And the only way that would actually work in our construction climate today, is if the government has pre-approved plans, certain home plans that they approve, that you buy from the government or whatever through an agency that got the approval for the government of like 10 different house designs, and they're like basically structured so we can get more people into the business of building homes and stuff like that, instead of relying on these large corporations. These large corporations, what they're doing is they're building up these subdivisions, and then 30-40% they're owning themselves to rent it out, because this is where the way they're going. It's not going to fix the problem. Of course, they are a huge part of the solution, and they should be made. Those big companies that do big, huge subdivisions are great. They're great. But I would rather see more a developer who develops it, makes the roads and stuff like that, and everyone buys plots in there, and there's 10 home designs that you can buy and plans that you can buy, and then to build in that neighborhood with many, many, many small little companies, and there's certain things you can do if you own your own business. There's certain things you can do without a ticket, and certain things you cannot do. You can't do structural things in the, you know what I mean, in buildings and stuff like that, stairs, stuff like that, companies and stuff like that. You have to do other things like that, but a lot of it can be done. The siding and all this stuff can be done by, these individual small companies who take their care. And everything, this is one thing I'm finding, my biggest problem in the housing industry, and I never realized this, and whatever. You blame the builder, you blame this. No. All of this stuff, you haven't inspected. I'm not going to name this, But I don't want to put in any plumbing where I can't test it. When I walk away, I want to be able to test it. And a lot of these companies, they're not testing it. You find out later, well, it never had a problem before. That's not, it's written in the thing is I'm about the letter of it. It's in the code. You test it. It has to be tested. If you test it, mistakes are made. No, when you're building a factory product, right? A factory product, there's a lot of factory workers are like, well, it's just cookie cutter. You do this and this and that, and there's no variations. Well, construction, there's variations all the time. There's only one way to ensure that there's no variations, that you follow the code. We have a code book that says this. You inspect it. And who gives a shit what the hell happened, as long as the end product is what matters, not how you got there, that you scraped the sides, you this. What matters is in the end that it's done. And having this, oh, well, I'm so perfect. You're a fucking, pardon my French, but you're just a fucking plumber, or you're just a plumbing company. You're not some genius, miraculous person. Test your work, and the cities need to do the testing. They have to enforce. Oh, I know the inspector. I heard that. I know the inspector. I don't give a shit who you know. You know 100,000 people. Oh, you're trusted. You're an idiot as much as everyone else is an idiot, and even a genius is an idiot. And I'm not, like, even Trump building idiot. You have to use the one thing that's tried and true, and that's testing it. And sometimes, and it happened one time in Quebec, PEX was a plastic. They didn't test, of course. They used the strain. Well, what happened was the strain of the plastic, it wasn't anything. The builder did everything right. The inspectors did everything right, but they didn't do the full inspection. Apparently, that's well, we all know how Quebec works. The bribes in the province is horrible. But what happened really was the pipe itself. It was a bad strain. It was a bad run they had. In this whole subdivision, all the pipes burst. If it was properly inspected, they would have found out on the first house, but they didn't, because they didn't inspect it, because someone knew the inspector. That's exactly what happened. It's filthiness. And this is the biggest problem I have. In commercial, you don't do that. In commercial, because the costs are so high and it takes so long to do a build, like, you know what I mean? There's so much put into it. You do the testing. You always do the testing. It's just standard. But in residential, they're just flying through it so fast that they're in such race to the bottom that if you know the inspector and you can get away with not inspecting it, because 99.9% of the time you don't have a problem, right? But the one time you could, plastic pipe comes in as a bad strain, or the fittings. And this another thing. There was fittings. There was a problem with this one type of pipe. There was the fittings. There was one type of pipe that I sold as a premium pipe to people. I said, this is the best. Because on the market, it was the best. It said everything, it was the best. Well, they don't make that product anymore because they found 20 years down the road, sometimes there was a problem. Very rare. But so they no longer even make it. They make a cheaper type of fitting now without these rings in it. So, like, if I wasn't even testing it, then it would have had more problems. So what was happening, apparently, was they weren't testing their work because you'd never get leaks with this stuff. It was like impossible. So when they got a leak, they were like, oh my God, chalk it up. Well, it was happening that so much that these guys weren't testing it and cutting it out and redoing parts, that they had problems. And so this is my continued argument about builds. All builds of the mandatory trades, structural, electrical, and plumbing, right? Structural is the heavy part. Siding is not structural. So these three parts should be thoroughly inspected, and maybe the federal government needs to put money, because we need a major build to help make sure that these things are happening. Because what happens at a local level, we all know, towns get entrapped. The guy works for the city. He lives in the town. The local heavies, builders in town, make a lot more money than the building department. There's 3 people in the building department, and they can wine, dine, and then lean on these inspectors, and they get away with things. And these are the companies that are rising because they can do this. And then when there one time was a problem, we'll blame it on this person. If you're not doing the inspection, the city has to be stronger. And that's why I never understood, why is the city doing the inspections on these builds? They're not powerful enough to fight international conglomerates. An international conglomerate is going to be like, yeah, local inspector from the town. Yeah, we'll tell him what to do, right? And if he doesn't listen to what we do this and that to him, or we just take him out to, we buy him a fridge, we buy him full fridges. This is stuff that happens, but if they're not insulated enough, like a federal person who takes care of huge swaths of a neighbor, you can't deal with those people the same. There's a different animal. And that is my number one problem within commercial. It isn't a problem, like I said. They do you put in this piping and electrical that's worth so much money. It's easy to do that. You do the testing on the system. It makes sense to the company. They're like, yeah, it just makes sense for us to do it. But once these other companies, they can get away with it with only local inspector. It doesn't happen. And then when you're dealing with companies like Starbucks, they demand you're doing the full inspection. There's these companies like, what do you mean you're not? Yes, you're doing the full, and they pay it for it, right? So this is my whole big gripe. Home inspector, yes, only one for a distance, says Thunder, and the area takes a long time to get penned in. You live where the people are. Not all of us do. Well, see, this is the thing is like, I mean, the inspector's local. They're not very powerful. It's not a very powerful position, but it's an important position. And in housing, they just get walked over. I'm not saying all the plans. Some towns are probably run good, but some are probably not. It should not be, in my opinion. If it's an Ontario code, right? It's an Ontario building code. It should be inspected by Ontario. It should be budgeted through the feds because a lot of these building companies are international. So international influence, all kinds of stuff is happening. You wouldn't believe. It's the filthiest industry. It's the filthiest clean industry is construction. It's clean, but it's filthy. Where'd you get the materials from? All this stuff. And we know there's foreign interference. Now, foreign interference can be just mild as this company is not inspecting, and they're getting all the bids. Oh, well, of course they're going to get the bid. They're not doing. It's only a day. It's only to do a proper inspection. It's one day. But if they're not doing it, or if the guy's like, "Oh, I'm not going to screw with these guys. These guys are scary." Well, it's the inspector isn't for the companies. The inspector's for the buyer, and it's the people. The people. We had problems before with builds that would happen. The fire code, and now the fire people. They've come to the point where there's no messing with that. They have a very good, strong, thing, but most of it isn't. It isn't the case. And like I said, it's nothing. Mobile builds, I don't know. Mobile builds is going, I don't know about mobile builds. Mobile builds can work. They're properly inspected. It's a possibility, a system. It's one method. It's one method, and it works. It's a system that works. It needs to be perfected. Factory work is basically what they're trying to build it to. I don't know. I'm not against mobile home builds or prefab home systems. That the only thing is it just needs to be inspected. That's all to me. For my part, everything else is fine. And the thing is that a company should make a commercial outfit. They make money on the inspection. They charge the client for the days spent on inspecting their own work. Where in residential, because a lot of them are getting away with it, they don't even do it. So to add that the company that does the thorough inspection, they're losing out. They're losing money because every other company is not bothering with it because they know the inspector. The inspector doesn't check their work. Oh, yeah, most of it's good. And everyone who's bought a new home, they go into their new home and there's like a list of issues. And that's all to do with the inspectors. And individual inspectors aren't the problem. It's the problem, again, I'm repeating myself. The problem is that they don't have the weight. They don't have the power behind them. They're just a little town. They're like, oh, well, you're a town. Oh, you're from this department of Toronto, like this suburb. Yeah, well, our company, we build all across Ontario. Who are you, right? And that weight is felt once, and that person doesn't get the same money and the same backing behind them. Whereas the labor people come in there and people are scared because they can shut your site down, no problem. The building inspector, they have no power like that. They just don't have it. There's no manifestation that they can do. And so if we're going to do a major building of this country, I've seen it. I've been to the boom towns. You go to the boom towns, and I was like, I had to drill in concrete. 8 feet. 8 feet wide. I was drilling into a hole. There was like a cavity in the concrete that was 8 feet long. I don't know how wide it was. I told him, like, I went and told the general, I'm like, listen, I just tried to put an anchor in, and I hit a cavity, and it was 8 feet long. I couldn't put a hanger. You got to put a hanger every. I was at the pipe. I had 4 feet, every 4 feet. I'm like, listen, I had to put a metal strapping, all this big contraption just to hold my pipe because there was a literal huge hole in the concrete. I said, yeah, this is full of it. This building's full of it. They poured it in the winter, and it was past inspection. I'm like, well, how did it pass? He says the inspector didn't even come. It was a construction boom. Like, it won't be a problem. 99.9999%. It won't be a problem. But it was a problem, like, for the strength, because they had the steel and all that stuff there, and we overbuild here. But for the piping and the plumbing and everything else that hangs, so it'll be a problem in probably a years or something in that area. They'll have to do a little bit of work in that area where there's that huge hole. Because these companies were trying to get as much work done. They were understaffed and all these things, and the inspectors weren't there, and they knew it after a while. The company that started went out of business during the build, so that was part of it, right? And all these things are all a factor because the inspection isn't done, and the customer has to pay it, and that has to be done. And then now that's my last thing I said. So build red tape, cut homes, but add more administrative to inspect. Yeah. I did. It will cost more. But this is the thing. It's already law. I'm not talking about adding a new law. This is saying I'm not adding red tape. This is in the code. You look at the plumbing code book, it says will be inspected. So it should be inspected. And they're pretending to do this, but it's not being done. That's my problem. And when the homeowner is the one who's paying for it in the end, because then afterwards they're like, well, I got an issue here or here, and it wasn't really thoroughly inspected. And it's not, we're not talking about major problems. Canada has a very good building. At least our materials are so good. It's not like a huge deal. But if we're about to do a boom, which is most likely going to happen, it will be a big problem. You have to do inspecting of what is on the books. And they're paying people right now. Every town is paying an inspector to inspect. But like I'm saying, they get builders that can lean on them. Oh, he's my buddy. Well, we've done this with him. We've taken him out here. And this is every company I've worked for does this. It's not one company. It's part of the filthiness. And if you don't want proper builds in a boom, you're going to really feel it. The problems they exasperate. When you're not in a major build, which we are right now. There's not many homes that we're building this year. It's less than last year. It's about doing things right and making sure they're done right. That's it. It's not like we're in a country that we have to not inspect and not follow the rule of law. I'm not saying about that. I'm not adding things. So that's it. Home inspector, yes, guy. So this is my whole opinion on it. And this happened. And everyone who's bought a new home understands this. Has had this list. And then they're fighting with the builder to get these little minor things fixed. And then they're all minor, and then they have a guy going around fixing these little silly things. It's just a case. And it all has to do with not properly inspecting homes. And the biggest cost right now is not the inspecting and the builders and stuff like that. The majority is going to government fees, and that's just a permit to be allowed to build. Like, just to be allowed to build a home on that property. That's where most of the money is going. Like, of a home, not to the builder. It's actually, they said, like Pierre's saying it, 50-50. Half the money is going to government just to allow you to build, and the other half is going to the building company. So the developer, the general, the carpenter general usually company is usually carpentry, the electrical company, the plumbing company, the siding company, the driveway guy, the concrete guys. They only get half, and the other government is charging the other half. And then then there's the other cost of the original person who sold the land, right, which is the developer in that. So half of that, and then the government's just getting half to do what? To inspect and to allow, and the inspection is another fee. You're paying. Every company has to pay for the inspector. You pay for that. It's already a part of it. It's just not being done to a proper level. In my opinion, is a very small thing that should be done in this country, and that's how I'm not picking out. There's no way to pick out any one company because it's the residential market. That's what it is, the residential market, and it's to me it's just kind of common sense. It's already being but okay, wait. Um, I don't know. Untreated wood for foundations. I don't know. I since at least the 60s, which everything I've built is concrete. I've worked under concrete foundations. Um, I've never untreated wood. Yeah. It's all concrete. Foundation companies, they got it. And listen, I remember I dealt with these foundation companies. First of all, at least the ones around here, you don't mess with them too much. And they go by the book. There's no bending. They won't bend. They're like, no, this is it. This is how it's done. And like I wanted this. It wasn't me. The one builder was there, and he was like, oh, we can't. We're trying to do this and this with these guys. And it's like, yeah, you can't mess with these guys. They know their business, and they know what will work on foundations and what won't. And they won't bend because they follow the code. And because there's so few of them around, they don't have to bend. They're not competing against each other so much trying to undercut. And they're a big company. And we don't have problems with foundations because of this. That's it. And the inspector, inspector may be lax with them because they're fully aware of these couple. There's only a few. Like I said, only a few around here that really do it. Like residential. Now, commercial is different. It's a different animal there. But I mean, residential foundations in our area, these companies, they follow the book. And there's like that foreman is someone you can't mess with because not well, just cheap out over here. He'll tell you where to go. He's the one you're paying, and he'll tell you where to go, and they'll pull up. Literally, the company, I don't know, I wasn't there, but this was a story I heard. They pulled up stakes. They pulled up, and they're like, we're not doing that. We're not going to have that. We're not doing it for our company. And they left that. They came back, but they left that day. And the builder, the general guy was like, what do you mean, where are you going? They're like, no, we're leaving. We're not pulling your bullshit. Now, only could a company that's really big and really this could do that. When you're a small, like three electrical people outfit, these people bend. Well, okay, maybe we want to inspect it this time, and then the next. This is what I believe. This is where my point is. Inspected house. That's cool. That's cool. Untreated wood. That's great. Okay, so here we go. Let's listen to the last. I think Carney is actually saying something. Really, he's saying conservative talking points, which sound like conservative talking points because Trudeau has been so far to the left, and talking about no more roads was like, what do you mean? Like, we're never gonna build oil. The Canada will never spend 2%. Well, he just said we're going to spend 2%. We're going to all these other things. We're going to be more pragmatic on our spending. We're going to cut costs of government. Remember, there's like 20 billion. I read this 22 or 20 billion in consultants that are being charged. Like it's a very, very high number. And he's talking about bringing that down. Now, at the same time, so these consultants, most of these consultant companies, the way what I see is happening, Trump is the initiator of it. We're going to be on a huge major build. Most likely, this country is going to be on a big major build. So these consultant companies are just going to be consultants for builds, construction, building, and infrastructure, stuff like that. If everything is going to according to this plan that we're going to build, not just the homes, not just the commercial, the infrastructure projects that take up a lot of people. And I know from every time I've been in a boom, every time there's been a infrastructure project, they take all the first people. They take the best people from every residential company. They're the first to go. So if you have like a plug toilet or something like that, you're going to have to wait. And like I remember the one guy was saying he had to wait a week. He had a plug toilet for a week. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I'll give you $1,000 if you come. I'm like, $1,000 to fix your toilet? I'm like, man, here's a plunger. Have a good day. I was making good, And so it's like that's what happens. So in a boom, so all the infrastructure takes that. Then there's the commercial builds. Then they take the other guys. So these residential companies, the owner's putting his tool belt on because it's so hard to find people, and they're the ones taking anybody up the street, literally going up to like places where there's people hanging out in front of 7-Eleven, say, hey, I don't want to work for today. That happens. This is a great thing, and if everything goes according to plan, which I think it is happening, is there's going to be major builds because of that missile. They're building the Iron Dome in America. That alone is going to be a huge project. You can't use any other labor outside of NATO. So it's not like China's not going to boom from this. We most likely will, and of course America. If we raise military spending, that's stuff that has to be bought in America. All of the stuff in Europe raising their spending, all the stuff that they're going to buy has to be the webbing, the netting, the hard hats, the this. Every single item that they're spending has to be American made, or Western, we'll say, NATO made. If the military, of course, does the spending. If we do this major push to Asia, the push to Asia, which I don't know why Trudeau was so much against it, which is probably going to happen. We've been had over $200 billion in projects have been canceled under the Trudeau regime. So basically, it's a big dam that's been building. And once they release the dam, there's just going to be so much work. It's going to be the point of like everyone's going to be like, why aren't you working construction? It looks like that. Now, we're teetering on a pendulum, but Trump's been in for 2 weeks. And this is what I have from 2 weeks, so. So I'm not sure what you're talking about with your untreated wood stuff. Foundation companies, I heard the general was complaining about him, and I was totally on side of these companies that the foundation companies are good, and the changes and stuff like that. I don't mess with them. That's should be for all the trades. I know myself when I was starting out, and I did stupid things. You're like try to rush, and you make a mistake. You're rushing, you're totally go fast. You make something stupid, or you do the client who isn't a builder is asked you to do something that's not really up to you. It's not to your standard, and I bent. I'm like, yeah, okay, and no longer. I just personally, I'm like, no. I've made these mistakes before. You're not going to bend my standard for this work. Now, if you're looking at paying your mortgage, you know what I mean, and there's no inspector that's ever checking it, you know what I mean, these things can happen. That's why it has to rely on the inspection in the end, and not on these companies' names, right, or this and that, right? Lowering your standard is always a risk because they always want you to, right? And like I said, I was the last side is like I'm not being able to test. You want me to put this in, and then I can't test it afterwards. I'm not signing my name to anything, And then it was like I know the inspector, and I was like, okay. I know how that works.
Canadien a de nouveaux marchés?
Encore une fois, c'est difficile de vous entendre, monsieur.
Je répète, OK. Appuyez-vous l'idée d'un nouveau pipeline avec l'Est pour acheminer le pétrole canadien à de nouveaux marchés?
OK, j'ai bien compris maintenant. Alors, il faut, comme je viens de dire, il faut changer le processus sans loisir. Et il doit avoir pour le libérer.
Question.
Maintenant, de défendre et nous.
Good morning, Mark. This is, pardon my quivering lips. This is Pratish Dhalla from CBC News. Sir, what would you be doing differently or similarly regarding the tariff threats right now, and what would be your action plan to support and save the jobs in the auto sector, specifically out here in Windsor?
Yeah, very good. Well, the first thing to say is that I very much join others in supporting the government's approach in terms of negotiation. We have one negotiating team with the United States. and foursquare behind that any perspectives I would give in private. Look, I will say, given that, two things. One, it is possible that, and some degree probable, that the broadest negotiations will certainly extend beyond the next few weeks. The uncertainty that's been created by these discussions, I think, increases the need to look at USMCA, or CUSMA as we define it, as we describe it, look at it in its entirety, and reinforce it, and build forward going forward so that that's there. So I think negotiations will extend, and I would very much like to be part of those. Irrespective, which is the second part of your question, and it's an important part, irrespective of those negotiations, the first and best thing that we can control is to be masters in our own house, which we are. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous, and it's to build and reinforce the economy here at home. And so some of the measures that I outlined, adjusting in our tax system, both for individuals and for companies, supporting builders with government programs that catalyze it, supporting action by speeding up permitting and other actions. You know, this great bridge, and I pay tribute to the workers that are constructing it. Those workers were held back for many, many years by slow progress on permitting and agreement. It was, of course, a cross-border agreement, but I remember even 20 years ago when it was still a concept. And our workers can do enormous things if governments partner with them and then get out of the way and allow them to build. And that's at the heart of what we can do as a country, irrespective of how well those broader negotiations go.
And Mark, would you bring back the federal EV incentive plan or add more money to the current one?
Yeah, I think, yes. With respect to EV incentives, the climate plan that we announced last week, which focuses on having large polluters pay for climate smart choices, that creates the ability and resources that could provide additional incentives for through federal programs for EV, and certainly my government would be looking at that going forward. Thank you.
Rusty Thompson from AM 800 CKLW. Windsor Essex is on the front lines of everything that's going on right now with the tariff threats and whatnot. Yeah. How would you shock-proof an area like this that faces so much turmoil based on the headwinds and which way they're blowing?
Yeah, it's hugely important. I think there's a couple of things to recognize. First, under the current CUSMA agreement, as you know, there is a 10-year window that the agreement, at least legally, and Canadians, when we sign an agreement, we respect the legal aspects of those agreements, so it provides some degree of legal certainty, although that may have to be litigated. I recognize that, Rusty. So I think what we would want to do is to have the discussion starting with particularly the industries in Windsor-Essex. In other words, and I'll start with automotives and all the components of the automotive supply chain. After all, the Auto Pact led ultimately to the Free Trade Agreement, led ultimately to NAFTA, led ultimately to CUSMA and the next negotiation. This is one of the great commercial relationships, engineering relationships in the world. It is a huge benefit to both our countries, and we build out from that. So I would look to do that, and do that in a way that works in a more competitive world, and think about the external perimeter consistent with an auto sector that needs to grow for generations. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up, are you concerned, though, then that any deal that is negotiated is going to be solid enough, given that, you know, the trade agreement that was just agreed under Donald Trump's first term is now being hailed as we're being cheated? Well, in his words, kind of, so to speak.
President Trump did negotiate the greatest trade deal in history. That's his words, not mine. Though I agree with them. I agree with his assessment, and it holds. And there's many aspects of that agreement that needs to be there. It has two implications for us. One, I do think it reinforces that we need to sit down at the table, understand U.S. concerns, address them where they can, but in a way that works best for Canadians. And we should do that sooner rather than later because this uncertainty has been created. The second thing it absolutely reinforces is we as a country must, first and foremost, build from within, build Canada, build one Canadian market, build broadly across this country. And secondly, it just makes sense to diversify our trading partners. We are one of the great trading nations. We have so much to offer, and particularly in the industries of the future. This is an enormous opportunity for us. There are more like-minded countries around the world that we can build the new architecture of trade and drive jobs that way. So it's, in both respects, a huge opportunity if we seize it.
Hi there, Mark. Lisa Shing with CBC News.
Hi.
And if you're able to also answer in French for my Radio-Canada colleagues, that would be great. So you're committing to hitting the 2% NATO defense spending target by 2030. Why not earlier, for example, 2027, like the defense minister is hoping to see happen?
OK. Tout d'abord en français. Il faut d'aller juste ici vers la fin de cette décennie. Il faut tellement nécessaire ici au Canada. It's not just about setting a target between now and the end of the decade, but it's also spending that money wisely and effectively, and above all, as much as possible, potentially the majority of the increase in that money spent here in Canada as opposed to the United States. And I'll refer back to my earlier reference that 80% of our capital spend in defense is in the U.S., not Canada.
And you say you've been speaking with the ministers about
So like he said, and I said, 80% of the money, when we raise the military spending, 80% of that money goes to the U.S. So this is a part of, like, when Trump is demanding we increase, we go to the increase of 2%, which was our commitment. It goes to NATO countries. It goes to, America a lot, and that's their industrial complex. And so that's part of why the steel is now a big factor again, because all the NATO countries have increased. Remember, Germany increased huge in the billions when it happened in Ukraine. So this industrial complex, and then this scenario, none of that can be built in China. Now, there's been chips that were finding their way through the supply chains from certain countries. Now, that's been basically separated out. Now, I think people are more aware of that. Our supply chain system, especially with defense and stuff like that. So it's basically a big boost on our. It's like money that goes in a circle, but a big boost to a lot of areas that are building, and that, like I said, every aspect of from the boots to everything, and they can't build outside of that supply chain of NATO. It's part of the deal that they signed, right? And it makes sense. Like, if you have a supply chain of a country that's potential adversary, which is not an adversary, but is potential adversary, makes no sense, right? We figured this out during the pandemic. When most of our like those little pills that we buy, and your stuff like that, your health pills and stuff like that, it's 90% is made in Asia, in China. 90%, like, holy crap! And they talked about cutting us off. It didn't happen, but they were talking when Trump was before the election changed and went to Biden, they were talking about cutting it off, and it was like, holy crap! And then increasing the price of, especially older people, right? You know what I mean? But the people who take a daily vitamin and stuff like that, their prices were looking at like doubling. And it was just because we basically outsourced. We had an investor group that thought, hey, why would we not have China manufacture all of our goods? They do it cheaper than us. I'll manufacture all of our health products. Why don't we have China manufacture every face mask that we have in this country? Well, when the pandemic hit, they literally stopped allowing them. Remember the builds? Everyone was like, it was a Canadian invention to build the type of masks that you needed, the ones that worked, not the cloth ones that made you feel good, but the ones that actually worked, the construction mask. It was a Canadian invention how to do the weave, and we didn't have one company in the country at the time to even make it. And it was a Canadian invention how to mass produce these things, and not one was made in this country. Well, we kind of figured that out. At least they have to be built in NATO, right? Pandemic is also if you look at modern warfare, is also something, and I don't even think of it as a warfare, but as a obviously a problem. And remember, we can't blame China. When we had America was the manufacturing place for everything in the world. The pandemics from the Spanish flu, it came from America. There was a flu that happened, and we're selling to everybody. So, it came from some soil or something. So it's certain things like that. I'm not against that. But to me, you can't have a country that could be adversarial to us. And no NATO country is adversarial to us. So, there's just too many things, too many ties that they won't be allowed. Their own companies will be like, what do you mean, politician? That's enough of that talk. We're selling to Norway, right? They're many ties and weaves that we can't. The system will not allow it to one NATO country or Western country to be isolationist in the way that China and Russia can be, right? Because they don't have the international trade deals, that millions of headaches that they won't have, and they proved it. They stopped shipping masks, and it was a problem. Hungary, who was pretty nice to China, like universities and stuff like that. Viktor Orban was more worried about his people than anything else. He got shipments of stuff sent to him from China because he was politically, I don't want to say aligned, but not at all politically aligned. But he was like not talking, bad, these people. So hey, in his small country, he helped his people. I was like, ugh. But then I thought, if I was leader of that country, he needed the masks, he needed the medicine. You know what I mean? He got it done for his people. Respect. And changing the world order on a dime doesn't happen, especially when you're a small country. So these things have to be looked at, supply chains in the long run, not just for money for today, as if the stock market rules the real world. The stock market doesn't rule the real world. The stock market makes the real world better. That's it. Just makes everything better, because before the stock market, regular folks couldn't invest in companies. You had to go to only people with money, which kind of at the time was a feudal-ish type system, right? The monarchies and the people who owned landowners and this and that, are the only ones who would give you a loan, right? So then when the stock market happened, and Holland, more people could get involved into doing the shipping. Or 1,000 people invested in the ship to go get some spices from Indonesia and come back. And we all made money. This made the system. It opened up the West. It was like the big opening of the West. So it's great. But the whole interconnectedness has to also be looked from a, not necessarily nationalist, but from a Western alliance system as well, in my opinion. It like steel and stuff like that and all that. So anyway, it's a little bit of a silly rant. Okay, hello. Hello, Gwen. Gwen, such a nice name. And there's so many Gwens I know. There's not one that came to mind when I want to put the last part. His French, Edmund Thunder says his French is very English in the chat. I think in the last 2 weeks it went from very poor to I understand. I don't know French very well. I'm not, you know what I mean? But it's less scary. His French, I think in a month, he may be pretty darn good if he's on it. And I think he is. Carney should stay away from Canada. Really? I think Carney is going to be most likely the prime minister. I mean, not the prime minister. He's going to be the Liberal leader, which actually kind of will be prime minister for a day. Will he win? I don't know. I don't think right now, but this speech here is pretty darn. It's pretty darn good. Red, pink hand. Under Carney, the Liberals actually stand a chance. Whereas now they're like looking at non-party status kind of thing. Of course, I'm exaggerating for effect, but it definitely is the case because they pushed the left agenda so far that people have been frustrated. Hey, you can't afford $1 million homes for like wartime homes, or 500,000 for like these tiny homes that were like a decade ago you could get them for 40, 50,000. This is like the value increase in value doesn't really make sense, right? And now we're going to have a generation that literally chose drugs for hope, which it makes communism more attractive, which is awful. Awful. We can't have that. We are the West, and we should be building. And he's starting to say we're going to build, and I think it's going to start in America, but it hasn't yet. We're on week 2.
Tariffs. What advice are you giving them? Are you giving briefings? What exactly are those conversations like?
Well, I'm just to be clear, fully support the exceptional work of our Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, our Finance Minister, Dominique Leblanc, Public Safety Minister, David McGuinty, Industry Minister, François-Philippe Champagne, and all the ministers. There's a huge Team Canada effort going on. They keep me informed kindly. I provide some perspective on that, and particularly with respect to where we go from here, the next phase of potential discussions that are likely to extend beyond the month of February and well into the spring. Thank you.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
En français, j'ai plusieurs discussions avec les ministres.
Okay, Gwen says Trudeau gave him acting lessons. I don't know. He doesn't act like Trudeau in any shape, way, or form, unless you're talking about me. You're doing that euphemism as me, whatever. I think that he's more pragmatic, and in Canada, we don't care about personality. Only, I enjoy it. The question period. Pierre just makes it awesome, but that's to me only half of politics. The first half to me is and that's part of getting elected is that exciting, creating a aura around you. But the majority of voters, not just people, unless all of a sudden we get a groundswelling like Trump got a bunch of people to vote. Remember, he got a bunch of people to vote for him who never had voted before. That's what the Conservatives need.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very good.
As you travel around, how would you characterize the reaction of Canadians to the tariff threat, to the 51st state annexation talk? And is this a fundamental change in how Canadians view not just Mr. Trump, but the United States? Have things changed permanently?
Well, I would hope it's not permanent, but it has been a very difficult time, I'd say, for Canadians. And I have been traveling around and have had very broad range of conversations with Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And I would characterize the reaction as, I think I mentioned in my remarks, initially one of confusion and bewilderment. Why is this joke that wasn't funny to begin with continually being made? Secondly, anger. I mean, it's insulting. It's an insult. We are a proud sovereign country. And now that's moving to resolve. I would say, okay, you've changed. You changed your priorities. We have our own priorities, and we'll move forward. So that resolve allows for continuing, close relationships in certain areas, but it does reinforce, I think, for Canadians, a real enthusiasm and energy to get on with things on our terms, because we don't want to wake up every morning and check X and Truth Social to find out how our country is being affected. No. We'll wake up, we'll listen to Rusty on the local radio station, right? We'll listen to the CBC, Radio Canada, CTV, Global. Now I'm going to be in trouble because I should list everybody. But please send in your complaints. But take things on our terms. Those messages have set in. And I'll say one other thing, which is the president has his priorities, and I want to commend his focus on fentanyl. It's a crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here in Canada. But the importance of working together on those issues. Absolutely respect that, and it's important that we've made progress, and we have to deliver on that progress. But what has been striking, I think, to Canadians is that the attitude that he's expressed in terms of our sovereignty hasn't really been challenged more broadly in the U.S.
And on tariffs too, I mean, does Canada have champions now in the United States, or
I think there is. Look, I'll make an observation. I'm reasonably familiar with a broad swath of U.S. business leaders in many industries. There's a number of things that this administration is pursuing that those business leaders disagree with fundamentally, but they're not talking about it. And their expectation is that eventually the financial markets will wake up to the very real challenges that these measures are going to cause the U.S. economy. You know, you can't suspend the law of economics. I've seen this movie before in Brexit, where steps are taken. It takes a while for the economic effect to come, but it comes. The impact of tariffs will cause inflation. Inflation will cause higher interest rates. Great linkages between economies can be torn apart with real economic cost. And so my impression is that those business leaders, it's more than my impression, I know that many of them are waiting for the reaction, and that reaction through financial markets will ultimately bring a counter reaction. It's a strategy, it's not leadership, and you know, it's another reason why we're getting on with our priorities. Thanks.
Merci. Dernière question. Last question.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Pierre Chapdelaine de Wallon de Radio-Canada. J'entendais dans votre discours que vous comptiez.
Okay, so that was Carney. I think, hey, I know majority here are conservative. I'm going to move this. I like this guy's gloves. Hey, the guy in the back, he's getting cold. You can tell, eh? Like, frickin' freezing here, man. Just having to stand. And I know what that's about. And anyone who has to stand in one place long enough, you get cold, right? You really get cold. You have to wear something really, really warm. You know, he's got his nice Canada mittens on. Canada. So yeah, hey, there's a couple of us here. It's no big deal. The guy is hiding some dark stuff. Who is? Who, Carney? I don't. You know what? If they got to that position right now, whatever. Okay. I don't think that any of that stuff, the character stuff, Carney, whatever, none of it's gonna fly. I think anymore. They're just basically. Remember that the cartels just got hit, so all of that like type of dark money hiding stuff, like it's going to start reading the surface, and they're going to have to retract. Now, like he said, it's going to take time. It's going to take quite a lot of time, right? We're going to, but it's slowly going to retract, slowly going to heal, and it's going to be just back to like more of the 50s factory type companies, building things, people doing their 9 to 5, eating themselves to a quick grave, you know. That is more, I think, going forward. Now, if everything happens forward, you know, everything is going to go in the direction as I see it. Now, there may be bumps in the road. Remember, what's happening basically is they're going to take the manufacturing of the world, which right now is China. They're the manufacturing country. We're going to be retracting from them, and they're going to have to sell to South American countries and African countries and other Asian countries, of course, as we raise tariffs here and make them less competitive. And then when we start building military-grade stuff, if what happens in Taiwan, that's been predicted by every single security int person that all open source, I don't know anything beyond open source. If that happens, huge thing. But remember, like this dark money and rabbit hole talk of this person and that, it's really going to be retracted because their money, there's been an excessive money into character taking out of this type of individual, and that's going to be a real big retraction. At the same time, there looks to be openings in the building, which is a filthy industry, as I said. So as this stuff they're getting into I think we're going to start seeing them move into other areas where they belong, or where it should be. Or you're going to start seeing real big busts and stuff. But I honestly don't. Trudeau, personally, I don't think will do anything about it. He said he will because he had to say he will, but it'll take the next prime minister, if we have the next prime minister, to do anything about the major problems. Canada has one of the biggest money laundering countries in the world, and other countries have been complaining about it. So it's not going to happen fast. The only way it can happen fast is if you have a good prime minister that says, okay, we know how you got your money, but what are you doing with it today? Okay? Are you going to be building buildings in this country, or are we going to have to come after you and confiscate crap? I think what's most likely going to be the case, as always is the case, elites are cool with elites. Remember what happened with the Panama Papers and all this stuff. I said, okay, just declare it, and going forward, you don't have to pay the billions of dollars in taxes, but we'll go after these little people. So most likely they won't go after them, but they'll say, okay, you have to start investing in our country with this money that we found, that we're not sure where it came from. But if you invest in this, or this, or this, and this, then everything is copacetic. And I think that's really what the signals of I've seen. Now I have no idea if this is true, or if it's going to come to fruition. But this is what the signals I've seen, and what from the in papers, and I haven't done the deep dive in them recently in the last 2 weeks, because I think everyone's just trying to read the executive papers orders from Trump. But that's what it looks like he's signaling, is saying it's not about the past, it's not about going after these companies, it's about going forward. No more fentanyl, no more. The cartels are labeled as this, so they're on notice. You have to do good with your money, or better with your money, and not human trafficking into our country, or whatever the hell they do after they get here. And money in politics, Biden signaled that the money in politics, that's going to have to retract. If you want money in politics, you have to have a business. You got to have a legitimate business behind you, like Google. Yes, Google can influence, because we know what Google is, or Amazon, or this and that. But when you're just coming with money, and it's not traceable and stuff, especially in Canada, I think that is what Trump, when I'm looking at the orders, I'm saying, and I don't know this, but I think that's what they've signaled. And by labeling these groups as terrorist entities, they're not going to be putting people in. I don't think they're going to be putting these suits in jail, these wealthy individuals that are moving stuff back and forth. I don't see that happening. I think it's just too big of a force that they don't want to go against. But Trey company, those people, the 13 people, those ones that don't have a country backing them, or base in their own country, they're going to be the ones that are going to be, swept up in the mix. Not the suits. I don't see that happening. But hey, I don't see it though. I think it's just going to be now. Okay, you're that big now. Invest in real business. They did this kind of with the mafia. It happened in World War II. The mafia was doing all kinds of illegal booze stuff. All kinds of industry, anything, car parts, this and that. And what they basically it was like, okay, work with us in the government, or we're going to start shutting things down, and that'll hurt America, and we don't want to hurt America. So go work in the industries that no one wants to work in. They took over like small things. We're talking small things that we all know is the trash companies, the unions. Go do things that the people want you to work in that'll help America now that you're so rich and powerful, and that we're at a war. And that's what we're at now. We're at an economic two worlds right now. And that's what I think is what's happening with Trump's doing. He's pulled out the stick, and he doesn't want to use it because it'll hurt America. And it's like, okay, invest in building some stuff in America, in a company in America, instead of whatever has been happening. Okay, whatever. It's okay. Have a good day. I think Carney. I'm not a sports fan when it comes to politics. I don't believe that most Canadians, the voting public, are. They're just not. They're not going to. I think, especially where the votes are, vote-rich Quebec, Ontario, Maritimes are very small, but these places are more so leaning into the center. And so they'll go conservative when they're totally tired, but when he's brought the whole liberal, he most likely he's going to win. He's going to bring the liberals to the center. And Pierre's still doing the angry talk. And he has a plan out there. I got to admit, I'm not going to do that on this little feed with a few of us here. But Pierre has a plan on the table. And the attack ads, I don't think they're going to work. They're working Alberta. Alberta, it's great. You got your base. They've got their Alberta base that's very angry and oil and all this stuff. But the majority of the voting population is not the people online. It hasn't happened here in Canada yet. And the last two elections are proof of that, under O'Toole and under Scheer. Now, Pierre is a different animal. He's a much bigger political animal. So like I keep saying, it's his to lose. But this is going to be a hell of a lot tighter of a race. It's actually there wasn't a race before. It was basically a coronation. It was a Coronation Street for Pierre. Pierre for Prime Minister is basically what it was. Now there's going to be a bit of a race because I think Carney is speaking common sense, which Canadians think is a good thing. But Dark, I don't see him. He's not. I don't think he's. He was more of a banking guy, kind of a Poindextery person, kind of mild, right? He's not very spicy. Are Canadians looking for spice right now? I don't think so. I think that he's striking the right tone with this speech. We're not looking for a well-to-do rich guy, another Trudeau. We're looking for a calmer person that can handle the waters of Trump, and Trump's leading in the right direction. I think majority of people believe Trump is doing the right thing, but I don't think we're looking for having the same personality in Canada. I think we're more looking for stability, as we always have, more so now than ever. That's why I think that it's a race now. It's still Pierre's race, but now we have a race. And hey, I'm not, obviously not, voting, and whichever way I vote, I'll even mention. But I see it starting to shift, and you shouldn't say sorry. So that's it. I believe in politicians is if I'm going to be on their team 100%. First of all, I kind of was at first, but then I got the rug pulled out of me. I feel that the rug from the Conservative got pulled out because I'm a piece of shit, right? I'm like, okay, I won't argue too hard that you think I'm a piece of shit, but I serve my country, and I'm a person who works hard and this and that. You know what I mean? I'm a valued person. So why would I continue to support someone like it's a sports team when they've acted like a politician? And I believe that with me. There's not 100%, but it's pretty damn close. They asked me to take down some stuff, and the guy was a little punk about it, and I was like, you know what? I don't want no one. My team. You're not a sports team. What have you done for me lately is the question. And what is your plan? That's why I keep saying, where's your plan? What's your policy? If you're just going to make fun of me, and I've worked 2,000 videos for 100% supporting, smashing Trudeau and making fun of him, and then I'm going to get, because you got a bunch of people together, and now I'm all of a sudden chopped liver. Okay, that's cool. I got no influence anyway, but my opinion is and I think that most Canadians are. I think I got my finger closer to the pulse than the Conservatives did when they just decided, hey, you're chopped liver, fuck off. Pardon my French. That it's what have you done for me lately? Give me some policies, and picking on I'm a schmuck. Why would you pick on a schmuck? You know what I mean? Like kick a guy when he's down. Literally, I haven't seen a paycheck in a year from this company. Now it's a year to come back, but that's just kind of like dirty politics on a schmuck, and it doesn't make sense to me. And that's not to me as a leader. That's why I was like, I got to question conservatism. If they're not loyal like that to someone who I was even not saying 100%, everything I thought was, but them being the law and order party and then forgetting about the law and order is kind of really where it lost me. It's like, wait a second. there's been some major problems here in this country, and we know Trudeau, because he said it himself, who he admires, that we know Trudeau is part of that problem. Mildly, he's our prime minister, right? Whether you voted for him or not. But, obviously, and then the Conservatives not handling it very well, dropping it basically from the leadership, that's basically, I don't understand it. And it helped them in the polls, though. It helped them politically, so it worked for them, but it only worked for so long, because what have you done for me lately? A year into it, everyone's like, well, wait a second here. You didn't action on this file. Why? A whole year of it? And now we're going to have the problem, which is Prime Minister Trudeau, who wasn't necessarily the problem, but he was the one who was basically like faux pas, but don't talk to me about it. It's not a problem, right? When we had him, and now we're going to have Mark Carney and Trump, who's all over this file, and he's going to make sure Canada and Mexico is all over this file. And it's starting with fentanyl. Fentanyl, where do the precursors come from? Where is the source of the problem? Do you understand where this is going? The biggest file that the Conservatives dropped is the number one file Trump is on. He was going to levy 25% tariffs on our country for us to focus on this file that they just dropped. And then we've had 3 now judges. It's not that big of a problem. 3 judges. The first 2, basically, the public couldn't even handle it. They were like, I cannot handle this. Like, you got to do it again. You know how many millions of dollars they've wasted on trying to get us to come and say there's no problem here? Millions. And they keep saying there's no problem. And we all are fully aware. There was police stations. They're dumping drugs on us. And like Trump said, there's no problem with fentanyl in their country, and it's coming from that country. Well, if they can stop it in their country, they can stop it being shipped out. They have a totally different strength of control that Trudeau admired, right? They have that we don't have here. They could stop it, but they're not stopping it. It's good to keep us weak, right? 77,000 people a year. That's and then the countless others who are just dabbling in it. That's apparently this stuff is so destructive. You touch it once and you have a problem with it. I don't know how much that is true, but they say 30 to 50 times stronger than heroin. And I don't know heroin in any shape, way, or form. They gave me those painkiller ones, like Tylenol 3s. I ate them because I injured myself. It was a muscle injury, no big deal. But I injured myself, and I was like, I'm done with these. I wouldn't even take them. I was like, I'll deal with the pain. No problemo. I'll deal with the pain because I didn't like those. Never mind that. And they're saying that this is 30 times stronger. This is destruction of a whole person for one pleasurable night for especially a teenager. And where is it coming from? So look at what's happening. And if the Law and Order Party, which is the Conservatives, have decided to drop the law and order, which Trump said is 25% of the problem. 25%, tariffs. That big of a tariffs on us. And they were like, well, why just us? Because the money laundering is in Canada. That's why. It's not the actual physical transaction. The worker bees are in the manufacturing center where they're pushing it out, but the money is up here. This is what it is. The money's up here. Now they're moving it around, and it's been fully aware that TD just got hit with $3 billion for taking in money. The casinos, there's all kinds of. That's just never mind what's happening. And I think what Trump has signaled is saying, okay, we know what's happened, but put your money into manufacturing in America, whatever, and all sins are forgiven, washed, whatever you want to call it. But if you're going to continue to do this one drug, make billions and billions and billions of dollars, as like what's his name says, they're going to shut you down, and they're going to make sure that America, as a whole, from north to south, is going to shut you down. We have a problem with this drug here. Mexico apparently has a problem with it. So, and that's what it is. Thank you for watching. And hey, he hasn't said that it's going to be a problem going forward.